And welcome to another episode of Stuck in My Mind podcast. I am your host, WIZE, and my next guest is a high performance coach. Welcome to the show, Katarina Polonska.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to
Oh,
be here.
the pleasure's all mine. Thank you for being a guest. I greatly appreciate it. All right, so you have a fascinating story. You've had some struggles yourself in life. What inspired you to become a high performance relationship coach, particularly for executives and entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, it's specifically around relationships, right? So, like high performance, but high performance in relationships. And what inspired me was I think I've always been pretty high performing my whole life. And I really think that's kind of a hangover from being an immigrant, coming to England when I was 4 years old. I see that a lot with my clients and with a lot of my fellow migrant peers that when you come to a new country and your parents have hustled really hard to get there, there's a real pressure to perform, to do well, to make the most of the opportunity. And so for me, it's always been something kind of really instilled into me, this idea that, if I work hard, if I believe in it, it can happen. It's a possibility. And so that kind of high performance mentality has been kind of like a intrinsic part of who I am throughout my life. I also have recognized that a lot of the time, especially with me, with a lot of my clients, that high performing drive, that energy can be coming from a wounded place. It can be coming from a place of anxiety, a place of not feeling good enough, a place of having low self-worth, whatever it might be. It's coming from this desire to be more, to achieve more, to, because you don't believe that you're enough as you are. And so that's something that I really got my head around and began to understand about 15 years ago when I first had anorexia, kind of a symptom of that high performing attitude. The ultimate kind of testimony of being a high performing female, at least in the day and age that I was in a girls' school, was actually to be anorexic. If you are really high performing and you're getting good grades and you're reading the room and you notice that actually being disciplined with my food and being disciplined with my exercise and being kind of that skinny athletic woman, then I get the social capital, I get the physical capital, people suddenly like me more, and it's like a win. And to me, that is kind of the ultimate dark side of being a high performer, right? So when that all happened, that's when I actually got my first coaching qualification. I remember going to my father and recognizing that I had some issues and I needed help, and the school counselor and school therapy wasn't really cutting it. And my dad, who was moving into executive coaching at the time, he was the one who said, well, I don't really believe in therapy. I don't really believe in you paying for someone else to help you. Like, you can figure it out. Again, kind of classic immigrant mentality of like, you can figure it out. Obviously, I couldn't figure it out. I was at the time a 16-year-old girl. Like, I had no idea what was going on with me. But he did pay for me to do a coaching qualification. And so I was super young. I think I was one of the youngest in the UK. And I went off on a 2-week retreat. Literally took time off school. I think I told them we were sick or something. And I did 2 weeks of immersion into the world of coaching, and coaching specifically in the kind of NLP realm. So learning about the unconscious mind, learning about how to communicate with the brain, all these really different, wonderful things. And that's when I began to kind of understand that, okay, all of this kind of high performance stuff does have a dark side, and I need to rein it in. I need to kind of get more into control of it and use it to my advantage. So long story short, later in life, about 15 years later, when I was working in behavioral science and I decided to leave the corporate space and create my own coaching practice, I started out by coaching executives. And ultimately, everyone I worked with wanted to be a high performer, right? They have this kind of high performance lifestyle. So really, that's kind of where the high performance bit came from. The relationship aspect came from, first of all, me being fascinated by how we typically don't have the best relationships with ourselves. That was kind of the initial point of inquiry. And then it really solidified when I was previously engaged with my ex-fiance, before I became a coach, when I was in the behavioral science space, and recognizing that, despite having qualifications, despite working in behavioral science, despite having done therapy for 15 years, despite having done all the retreats imaginable, despite having done plant medicine, trying all the different types of therapy and And having, access to all of this incredible behavioral science, I still ended up engaged to the wrong person, and I still ended up actually leaving that relationship. And to do that in my early 30s was pretty horrifying, because I was on trajectory. I wanted kids, I wanted the family, the white picket fence, blah, blah, blah. And so walking away from that was a real kind of humbling experience. And what I realized when I was doing the executive coaching was that I wasn't alone actually in struggling with relationships, that you can do all the personal growth in the world. You can meditate every day. You can eat well. You can have, a good lifestyle. You can have a great career. It doesn't mean that you're going to be good at relationships, though. Being good at relationships is a whole different kettle of fish. It's a whole different language you have to learn. It's a whole different way of relating to yourself. It's a whole different lens within which you have to look at yourself. And so when I actually called off that engagement, I went on this 11-month kind of pilgrimage, I guess, on my own, of just going deep into trying to understand, how is it that I ended up engaged to the wrong person, on the back of my parents being divorced? And am I doomed? Am I destined to fail in this arena? I don't see why I should fail. But being a single woman in my early 30s, kind of recovering from this engagement, it pretty much felt like I would fail. It felt like I would never find anyone. And so as I went deeper and deeper into the work, and I discovered attachment theory, and I was knee deep in that, then I trained in it. I kind of reignited a lot of the work that I did with the unconscious mind. I discovered everything around core wounds and our conditioning, and really worked hard on reconditioning myself. And then within 11 months, I met my now husband, and that all kind of came together when I built my coaching practice. So there I am, being an executive coach, building this new business, coaching high-performing execs, recognizing, every single person here is struggling in their relationships. It wasn't just me. This seems to be a real theme. It's a real pattern. And if you look around, there's no help. You've got the marriage counseling institution, but statistically that doesn't work. If you look at the stats on it, there's a stat that is, like, I'm going to butcher it now, but I think it was 70% of couples who do marriage counseling still break up down the road, right? They still break up. It doesn't matter, and it's expensive, and you're doing it for years, and it doesn't work. And same thing with therapy. And so that's when I decided, okay, I'm here to solve that problem. How can I be the go-to person for helping high performers fix their marriages?
So is that
their life?
sorry? So is that when you came up with the concept of the successfully in love method?
Yeah, absolutely. I was kind of thinking, like, what does this even actually look like? And I was like, well, it's because you want to be successful, right? But you want to be successfully in love. You want to be successful in every area of life, and successful in love with yourself, with your partner, with your life, with your career, with your finances. So yeah, I like the name.
So how does it work? How does the concept of successfully in love method work?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I did in those 11 months, and really it was a little bit longer than that, from ending that first engagement and being in a really dark place, kind of being in this place of a lot of anxiety, being very anxiously attached, feeling very lost, very scared, to then meeting my husband and, having a very different type of relationship now, like very happy, very relaxed, very safe, very calm, like all the wonderful things. What I did in those months, I was knee deep in the work, right? I was very lucky again that I was working in behavioral science. I had a very comfortable job with the biggest coaching company in the world. I had a massive budget to spend on personal growth and education. I had a really hefty, lovely corporate salary, and I just spent money on training and education, and like went knee deep. And so when I came out of that and I was building up my business, and I was kind of thinking, what is my methodology? And so I partnered with a trauma psychologist, and together we mapped out exactly what I did back then. And we built, at the time, very loosely, a system around a methodology where chronologically the results that you do compound on each other. And that was really important to me, because what I found over the 15 years prior was that, sure, I was doing, quote unquote, all the right things, right? I was seeing a therapist every week for like 15 years. I was journaling, I was meditating, I was doing breath work, I was doing somatic work, I was doing all the modalities, but everything was very scattered. It was very incongruent. It was very much just me kind of dabbling in different things willy-nilly, kind of as I wanted, with no real system to it. And that's why it took so bloody long to get actual results. And so with the methodology, I come from a corporate background. I was really mindful that I wanted everything to compound. I wanted to start with something that would then lead to the next step, that would lead to the next step, and so on and so forth. And so I built this methodology, and it didn't have a title at the time, but I began testing it. And I tested it on people in my network. So I actually tested on a load of Oxford PhDs. There were a lot of Oxford PhDs in my network who were building their own businesses. They were all stressed out, burned out, etc. So I began coaching them for free. And even though I already had kind of coaching clients from the executive level, but I did this specifically for free. And what I found was that the methodology worked really well. I iterated it a little bit. I pivoted here and there. And then I formalized it. So then essentially I took it out to market and trademarked it. And what it really is, simply put, it's a 3-phase methodology. So phase 1 is called liberation. In the liberation phase, what we're really looking to do is to liberate you from the patterns, the blocks, the conditioning that's maladaptive, that isn't working for you. And we all have this, right? We all have this in some arena of our lives, if not all. And so if your marriage isn't what it wants it to be, if you're single and unable to find love, if you're feeling a little bit disheartened by your relationship or by your love life, if you're feeling a little bit burned out, fatigued, exhausted, whatever it might be, you can bet that there's going to be some kind of block there, some kind of pattern there. And we know that we have blocks because it's part of being human, right? Between the ages of 0 and 8, as your brain is forming, it's very spongy, it's very malleable. You're basically taking in everything around you. You don't really have discernment. You have natural egocentrism as a child, and you make everything about you. And so whatever you see your parents do, or your primary caregivers, whatever you see on TV, whatever you see in society, you make it about you. Mm-hmm. And we don't live in a perfect society, nor do we have perfect parents, right? We live in a pretty messed up world, actually, if we want to kind of go down a dark route. And so you're taking on a lot of messages, you're taking on a lot of narratives, beliefs, conditioning, systems that aren't actually going to help you. And they're probably not even accurate half the time, right? Yeah. And so all of this stuff you need to dismantle. And so in the liberation phase, we're going deep into looking at what are the beliefs, what are the blocks, what is the conditioning you have around love? And most people here, probably listening, I'm going to think, I'm fine. I don't have anything. My parents were great. I had a lovely household, I had a lovely home, and my parents are happily married and blah, blah, blah. You can still have blocks. It doesn't matter how ostensibly perfect your home is. And of course, you want to defend your parents. You're still going to have blocks, right? Yeah. We have blocks just by way of growing up in a capitalist society. Mm-hmm. We have blocks by way of growing up in North America, wherever you are. There's going to be blocks. Mm-hmm. And so you want to bring a magnifying glass to these and make the unconscious conscious so that you can change it. So that's for phase 1. Phase 2, once you've cleared out the blocks, is now that you can see clearly, now that you're not blocked, now that you kind of have free reign to examine yourself, we start to look at, it's the behavioral science phase, and we start to look at who are you at your core beneath the blocks? What is it that you actually need to be happy long term? Most people don't know what they need. They know what they want, right? They know what they've been told to want. Everyone wants a 603 guy in finance, and everyone wants to be, a millionaire, and everyone wants X, Y, and Z. But what do you actually need? What do you actually need? And again, most people will be blocked from what they need because as a child, especially if you're a high performer, God forbid that you had any needs, right? Like it's not okay to have needs. It's not safe to have needs. Your needs were probably never met. They were probably never even seen or heard. And so you've repressed your needs because there's a lot of shame around them. And so, of course, you're not going to know what you need in a relationship. And of course, your relationship's going to suffer if you even have one at that point. So getting very clear on what is it that you actually need and creating strategies to get those needs met. Then I also talk a lot about gender dynamics. So that's a field that I specialize in academically. I did my master's degree at Oxford studying masculinity and femininity and really looking at how do the different sexes communicate? How does gender shape our identity? How do we actually get trapped? How do we actually limit ourselves? Where do we actually go wrong? Where do relationships break down? And so you want to kind of re-educate yourself on this because a lot of the time we're carrying a lot of toxic nonsense that doesn't actually work in a functioning relationship, right? And then lastly, in that phase, we also look at, what is the science of a healthy relationship? No one ever taught us how to get into and hold down a healthy relationship. These are all skills we need to learn. So that's the second phase, behavioral science. And then finally, we have the third phase, the integrity phase. And the integrity phase is really all about, now that you've cleared away the blocks and you don't have them anymore, now that you know very clearly what you need to be happy, you know your own kind of unique recipe for your own gender dynamics, you know how a healthy relationship looks. The third phase is all about bringing it all together and building a strategy. So I love strategy. I mean, again, that's kind of my corporate background. And so when we think about strategy, it's not so much as how do I sit swiping on the apps, or how do I, communicate to my wife about X, Y, and Z? It's more holistic than that. It's looking at your whole life, because I'm a big believer, and actually Esther Perel was talking about something very similar on a podcast recently, that when your life is optimized in every respect, from your health to your wealth to your career to your friendships to your hobbies to your home life, that's when your relationship is actually going to be more likely to thrive, or when you're likely to find the right partner, right? So we want to work on every level and take everything that we've learned and again, kind of do this broader life audit. We also want to learn how to communicate, because now that you have this new sense of self, how do you communicate that, right? So that's the integrity phase too, because you need to communicate it fully to be in integrity with yourself. So that's kind of the 3-phase process. And yeah, I've been doing that now for a while, and I love it, and it works.
So how can someone identify if they're in an unhealthy relationship, and what steps can they take to change it?
Yeah, really good question. And actually, I've had my wrist slapped by my own coach of like, you keep saying healthy relationship. What does that even mean? To me, a healthy relationship is one where you feel nourished, where you feel safe, where you feel seen, where you feel chosen, and where you feel loved. Right. So if you have all these things, then you're probably in a healthy relationship.
Yeah. But it's both parties be feeling the same way.
Absolutely.
It has to.
Very good point.
Because a lot of people go happy wife, happy life,
Yeah,
and no.
Very sad, repressed husband with his needs not getting met. Yeah.
So it's. So yeah, it's I just want to make sure that we verify that we need both people to be
totally. And that's a really good point you've raised, actually, because that's exactly the kind of gender dynamics toxicity that I talk about, right? There's kind of BS that, happy wife, happy life, like maybe to an extent, but most of the men I work with who are divorced now, lo and behold, surprise, surprise, it's because they never got to even hear their needs. They never got their needs met. So of course they're deeply unfulfilled. Like, it's not happy life, right? You need happy husband and a happy wife to have happy life. Yeah. And so what's unhealthy? Unhealthy is precisely that. If you have, and just to caveat here, I'm not talking about you have a few bad days, or, a couple of months with your partner, things feel rough. And of course you might even have a year. If you're in a very long-term relationship or marriage, there might be a year that's actually a really rough year. That's okay, right? We have our ups and downs. Ultimately, though, the good has to outweigh the bad. And if you're feeling unsafe, if you're feeling, and I don't mean unsafe in terms of even kind of physically unsafe, I just mean if you're feeling that you can't actually express what you need, whether it's an intimacy, whether it's just emotional needs, if you feel shame around expressing what you need, if you feel fear, if you feel that you have to bite your tongue, if you feel that you have to walk around on eggshells, if you feel that when you say something to your partner, they're going to get really defensive and start arguing with you or throwing a grenade at you, and then it escalates into a big fight. If you feel that you have to hide things, tell white lies, tell big lies, these are all indicators that something's not quite right. And that doesn't mean that you're doomed. Doesn't mean that the relationship has to end. It just means that you have to look at things. And there are typically 2 levels you want to look at things, right? Or at least 2 levels within your control. The worst thing that we can do is point the finger and blame the other person, right? And I used to do that like there was no tomorrow. I would blame the partner and project all of my stuff and be like, oh, if only he would do this, and if only he would do that, and if only he would change this and change that. That's not how it works. Ultimately, there are 2 levels to look at the relationship. What am I bringing to the table, right? And that includes, what am I unconsciously bringing to the table? What am I unconsciously projecting onto this relationship? Am I responding to what's happening in front of me right now with an interpretation from the past? Am I dumping something from my own past onto this? Or am I responding in real time to the present moment? And only you can know that. But 9 times out of 10, there's going to be stuff in the past being dumped there. So you need to look at that and how you're showing up to the relationship. And then 2, that's kind of more in the inner work. And then 2 is like, how are we actually relating in the relationship on an external level? Most people typically will jump to the external, right? They'll run to a marriage counselor and they'll start talking about communication. They'll talk about relationship practices. They'll talk about the timeout and all these different lovely tools, which are really helpful. But if you have your own stuff on an internal level that you keep dumping and bringing to the relationship and projecting, it doesn't matter how many tools you have. It's not going to work because your unconscious mind is 95 to 97% of your reality. And talking about things, bringing tools and techniques is only 3% of your reality, the conscious mind. So it doesn't work. You have to go on a deeper inner level. You have to work on that inner stuff. So they're kind of the 2 planes that you want to look at, right?
Yeah.
And neither of them involve blaming your partner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is in your experience? What is one of the biggest misconceptions successful professionals have about love and relationships?
Yeah. I think, well, there's 2 I think that I hear all the time. One is that you can't have both, right? That you can't have a successful career and a successful relationship or a successful marriage, that they're somehow mutually exclusive, which is a massive load of nonsense. Because what we know statistically is that actually people who do this inner work, who do the work that I teach, they actually go on, of course, to have happy relationships. Absolutely. You also go on to earn more money and have better careers. Why? Because when you've done the inner work and you have a happy home life, you have so much more mental real estate available to go and self-actualize.
Okay.
Like literally. Like I know when I met my husband and everything settled and kind of got into our own rhythm and routine, yeah, my income went up. I lost weight. I looked better, right? Like I looked younger. And it's because, again, I kind of lost baggage. I felt lighter. I felt happier. I felt safer. And so all of these wonderful things for the nervous system will actually propel you into your career, into your finances. And then the second thing that I hear, which is a really big misconception, is this kind of idea of like, it'll figure itself out. My relationship, my love life, it'll figure itself out. And that is like the most bizarre thing that I've heard. Because think about it. You don't let your finances figure themselves out.
No.
Right. You manage them, right? You
Yep,
probably
absolutely.
track them. You
Yeah.
probably have like a, bank manager or like an investment advisor, wealth manager, whatever it might be. You have goals, you know where you're going. You take care of them, you nurture them. You don't let your career figure itself out.
No.
You have a plan, you want to get promoted, you have like a strategy, right? Or you're building a business, you're going somewhere.
Yeah.
You don't let your health figure itself out. You're proactive. You go to the gym, you take your supplements, you try to watch what you eat or watch what you drink or whatever, like you're taking care of it. You don't even let your friendships really figure themselves out. You're pretty proactive about them, right? And you show up at your best to friendships. You watch what you say, you watch how you present yourself. So why is it that with your relationship, which Harvard has shown multiple times is the biggest indicator of your happiness in life, your romantic relationship is literally the biggest indicator of how happy you're going to be in life and actually your longevity as well. Why is it that that's the one area that people are like, it'll figure itself out. It'll happen when the time's right. Like, no, it won't.
No,
It won't, right?
definitely not.
Such a fallacy. Yeah.
So, okay, how does your background in behavioral science give you a unique edge in helping your clients find love?
I think partly it's just kind of nerdiness. I love this stuff. I love behavioral science so much. I love studying it. I love nerding out on it. And I think it just gives another level of depth and understanding, right? So doing the qualifications that I've done, studying what I've studied, definitely came easier because I had a background in it, right? I had a corporate background. There's also probably a benefit of having more of a commercial lens on it, right? So I'm not coming in talking knee deep about psychology and these deep psychological concepts, which are actually very hard to digest and very overwhelming for people. Coming from a behavioral science background, a corporate behavioral science background, means my job for a long time was to translate complex topics into really simple, commercial, bite-sized ideas that I could say to a CHRO or say to a VP of L&D and get them on board, right? And so I think that kind of problem-solving lens of how can I solve this problem in the most efficient, clear, simple way available to me in a fast way, because I think that's probably the other thing too, right?
Okay.
In my experience, and this isn't to poo-poo therapists or anything, like, don't get me wrong, like I love therapy. It's great for awareness building, but there's very rarely an end goal. There's very rarely a timeline. It's typically just let's talk and see how things go and kind of let things unfold. And it's kind of never ending. You can always develop more awareness. Whereas what I like about the coaching, the behavioral science is more like, well, we have a budget, we have a time frame, we have certain outcomes, we have certain KPIs, we have deliverables, and we want to make this as digestible and clear and impactful as possible, right? And so that's kind of the approach I bring, which is exactly why I created this 3-phase methodology that works, that you can do in 90 days to 6 months, depending on how long you want to work with me, that you can do, in various different ways. It's efficient. There's a goal. It's outcome orientated. My outcome, ideally, is either to fix your marriage or find you a partner.
Mm-hmm.
It's like pretty clear and simple. So I think that's probably the edge from that corporate background.
Okay. Excuse me. All right. What role does vulnerability play in building strong, lasting relationships? Because I know, especially with high performance men, whatever, sometimes they might be afraid to show the vulnerability to their significant other or someone they're trying to build a relationship with.
How does vulnerability play out?
Yeah.
I mean, vulnerability is kind of the foundation of any relationship to yourself, relationship to your partner, right? And I think there's kind of this preconception that vulnerability is you crying, exposing yourself and crying to your partner and being, I guess, quote unquote, weak.
Yeah.
That's not what it is at all. Vulnerability is simply letting yourself be seen and sharing that. And so vulnerability is admitting that maybe you don't know what you're actually doing. You don't have to be crying with that. You don't have to be falling apart. It's simply admitting the biggest truth that you have. Vulnerability is honesty. Really.
It's being yourself. It's allowing that other person to see who you truly are.
Totally.
Like, you don't necessarily have to cry in front of them.
Absolutely.
You can show them that you're vulnerable by your actions, by just being like, hey, like opening up, just being able to say, hey, I'm having a rough day, and talking to them and expressing, because for years men have always been told, oh, you can't show your feelings, you gotta be strong. Although sometimes we struggle, and so it's my wife appreciates when I'm able to go talk to her.
Yeah.
When I'm having a bad day, she wants to hear those things. She wants to be able to be like, hey, I know you're struggling with things, talk to me. And that's all they really want.
Totally 100%. Because the way I see it is the best relationships are built on honesty and transparency, right? Vulnerability is honesty and transparency. And when you can be honest and transparent with your partner, and when you can reveal yourself, it's a very healing thing. It's actually a very brave and healing thing, because in letting yourself be seen, in letting yourself be shared, you are eradicating any shame that you might have inside of you, which is very healing, right? Shame cannot exist when we shine a light upon it. And you're also being very honest, which is a very noble and courageous thing to be doing.
Yeah.
You're also facilitating greater intimacy, right? I love this idea of kind of intimacy is like into me, you see, like it's you seeing into me. And so these are all really noble, courageous, good things. Why wouldn't you want it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it allows the other person to understand you too, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of the final thing I'll add is so many of our relationship problems could be just eradicated if we were just more honest with each other. Like I have a client who he doesn't want to be with a woman who doesn't have her own income, right? That's just something that's important to him. And he has a lot of shame around that, because he's like, oh, what does that mean about me? And I'm like, but it's okay. Because actually, if you're just honest that you want someone who's got, the income is just a proxy, right? Like, what does it signify? It signifies independence, a mission, a vision. some intellect, like all wonderful things. If you can
Mhm.
just be honest about that, you would have saved yourself the past 5 years of the past relationship,
Yeah.
right?
And that's it's my wife is very independent. At one point she made more than me,
Yeah.
and it was okay. It was I didn't let it because I knew she worked hard for the position. Like she works
Yeah.
hard
Yeah.
where she was at. So I don't want her to feel ashamed that, or
No,
I don't want to feel like hey, she listen. It benefits us both because and that's how we look at it. It's like okay, at one point I made more. This now she makes and so it shouldn't be an issue because it just shows you like hey listen like you said it shows that she's independent she's not with you for your money you
totally.
you can see that
Totally.
she's with you because of who you are and what and the kind of person you are.
Totally. Totally. These are all good things, right? If you can be transparent and honest, and someone else might not want that. Someone else might want someone who doesn't work. And that's also okay. Just be honest about it, be transparent, be vulnerable,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And you're more likely to find success.
Definitely, absolutely. What a how do you help ambitious women balance their drive for success with the desire for meaningful relationships? Because it's not just men, also it's also high
Yeah,
performance
totally.
women, high performance women out there who can't find healthy relationships.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even that question is kind of built on the premise that they're two mutually exclusive things, right? Which they're not. We know they're not. You can have both.
Hmm.
Um, what you can't have is you can't have 12 hours a day dedicated to, being in the spa and being a lady of leisure, and 12 hours of the day being dedicated to grinding at your startup. Like, there aren't enough hours in the day, let's be honest. But the thing that I always say is when there's a conflict and you're feeling like I can't do it all, or I have to pick one over the other, it's very rarely the case that you have to pick one over the other. It's more of a case that you need to optimize what you currently have. And people are notoriously bad at optimizing because people notoriously don't know what they need. Back to that idea about the needs, right?
Hmm.
A big block that a lot of women will have is that I can't have an ambitious career and a happy home life. That's a big block. We've been fed that. That's kind of the anti-feminist backlash and whatnot. Like there's a lot of cultural messages out there
Yeah.
to propagate that myth, right? You absolutely can. And so you want to look at the blocks that you have around this stuff, clear those. And once you've cleared those, you want to get really clear on like, what is it that I need again? What are my needs? Why am I working like this? What is my ambition? How does my ambition and what I'm actually striving for get my needs met? Because if you're just blindly going after $1 million for the sake of $1 million, that's not going to make you happy long term, right? You're going to burn out. There has to be a bigger why behind it all.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, again, I always see it like, maybe my brain just works this way, but it's kind of like a puzzle.
Okay.
You've got, 12, 14, what am I saying? 24 hours in the day, 24 hours in the day. And you want to be optimizing every hour to get your needs met. It really is that simple. The difficulty is that most people don't know what their needs are. But once you've figured it out, your day can easily look like, okay, well, I've got 10 hours of work because I just love my work and I actually just want to do a 50-hour week. Great. And I've got, an hour at the gym. And actually, because I have a strong need for connection, I go to the gym with my partner. We work out together. And then again, because I have a strong need for connection, maybe we go home and we like shower together, and that's like part of the intimacy piece. And then maybe we like cook a nice meal together, and that's again part of the connection piece. And then maybe we do a relationship exercise every night to actually really connect us. And so lo and behold, suddenly you've gone from having 10-hour work days to having a really rich home life that's actually very robust and very packed with love and intimacy. And in there you intersperse some time with friends and some time with family. It is all doable. You just have to be smart with what am I solving for? That corporate me is coming out now. What am I solving for? And how am I going to solve for it? Right? It does require a little bit of calendar organization too in the short term, but eventually you get into the swing of it.
Okay. Excuse me. Um Oh, you've like a lot of the questions I had, you answered.
It took fast.
Oh no, it was good. Um, Now it's time on the show where you get the solo screen. You get to plug away, let people find out where they can check you out, where they can find you if they need help. Here we go.
Yeah, thank you so much. So best place to find me will be on my website, www.katarinapolonska.com. On there, I have a couple of freebies that you can download, including a free masterclass. In that masterclass, I walk you through the behavioral science of attraction, which is the kind of the methodology behind my Successful in Love method. It's well worth watching. It is a very jam-packed masterclass, full of info, full of insights. Definitely worth watching. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. So if you find me Katarina Polonska on there, you can just type in high performance executive relationship coach and Katarina Polonska, you should find me. You can drop me a DM on there. I'd love to connect with you. And I post pretty much daily on LinkedIn with some informative content. So you can also learn a lot there. And then lastly, it'll be on Instagram. So at Katarina Polonska on Instagram. I do have also a couple of different, programs. So I've got the main program, and then I've got a few kind of easier to access programs that you might want to dip your toe into just to learn a little bit more about my work. And then I have a podcast too. So you'll be sick of me by the time you start diving into all of the content. There is a lot there for you to dig into.
So, what is the name of your podcast?
The Successfully in Love podcast.
Okay, so I'm sure it's on all major platforms. So
It is
definitely
indeed, yeah. It is
go
indeed.
subscribe.
Yeah,
Check the bell. Everything. Just definitely go check out her everything she got. It'll be in the show notes, the descriptions. I'll definitely have them out there for you guys to check it out. And anything else before we leave?
I just want people to know that or rather that you, if you're listening, you deserve to have true love in your life. We all do. And it is possible. It is out there. Even if you're not feeling it right now, it is possible.
It is. It's definitely for me. It's been a crazy journey. I was widowed at 31, and I didn't know if I would ever find love again. And I've been blessed to be able to find love and find someone who challenges me and completes me at the same time. So I'm lucky to really have someone who's very supportive of what I do. I support her with what she does, and so I'm a lucky one of the lucky ones who's been able to. Yes, we have our issues, like you said. There's going to be times where we have bad times, but the good outweighs the bad.
Yeah.
And so we've been together now. Oh man, 11 years.
Wow. Very nice. Well done.
Yeah, and we just keep getting stronger, and it's again, it's us communicating.
Yeah.
It's us being able to sit down and talk and be able to whenever we have something on our chest, we're able to like she might say something, and yes, I get upset. I might not like what she says, and then I let it. I'll cool off, and then I'll go back and we'll discuss it again. And but for me to say that we're perfect, no, we have our moments.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But thank you so much for being a guest. I greatly appreciate it. Let me close out the show, and we can chat a little bit off the air. But once again, thank you for being such a wonderful guest, and I would love to have you back on.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and I'd love to return.
All right. Do you plan on writing a book or anything, or?
Oh, I need to. I just need to find the time. I want to.
That's what you might want. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I need to, don't I? Finding that time. I will. Well,
when you write the book, then
thank you.
You can definitely come back and promote it. But I definitely would love to have you back on sooner rather than later. But thank you for being such a wonderful guest.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
All right, let me close out the show and we'll chat a little bit off the air. All right, everybody, another great episode. Thank you to Katarina for coming through and sharing and being a wonderful guest. As always, big shout out to my Real Wise fam, Poppy J, Brandy J. Love you guys. Big shout out to the boss lady. Love you and appreciate you. Um, Big shout out to everybody who will tune in later on the replay or catch this when I release it on the audio. Remember, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Hit the notification bell so you can know when we're going live. And as always, big shout out to all the essential workers out there. God bless y'all. Be safe. You know how your boy Wise does it. Peace out.